Tonight, Riyadh awaits the arrival of Donald Trump for the first leg of a Middle East tour that could have major repercussions, not just here, but around the world. The US president will hold a series of meetings in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates to discuss everything from peace in Gaza to trade and oil output. A boost before departure, with China and the United States agreeing to a 90-day truce in their trade war. But even with the president currently crossing the Atlantic in the old Air Force One, there's a row brewing over a replacement being offered for free by the Qataris. We'll be following Donald Trump's every move in the Middle East on a tour which could prove pivotal for the future of conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine. Also tonight, the American-Israeli hostage Idan Alexander has been released by Hamas. Will it unlock a path to a wider peace deal? And what about the reaction in Israel over Trump's intervention? The Kremlin stays silent on whether Vladimir Putin will take up President Zelensky's offer of face-to-face peace talks in Turkey later this week. Plus, the sorrow mixed with the celebration as the ceasefire continues to hold between India and Pakistan. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening from Riyadh, where in a few hours' time, Donald Trump will arrive for the start of his first full international tour since returning to the White House. The trip will also include stopovers in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, and the US president has hinted he may take a detour to Turkey if there is any prospect of a face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. But Trump's influence in the region is already being felt, even before Air Force One has landed. Today, the American-Israeli hostage, Idan Alexander, was released by Hamas and is safely back in Israel. The deal for his release was brokered directly by the United States, although tonight Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said it was a joint effort between the two countries. Our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, is in Jerusalem for us, and a warning, his report does contain some distressing content.
584 days after he was taken hostage on October the 7th, Idan Alexander, a dual US-Israeli national, was released from Gaza. This photo was taken as he was handed over to the Red Cross. The 19-year-old, who was serving as an IDF soldier, was then taken to the Israeli border to be reunited with his family before being flown to hospital near Tel Aviv. Hamas said that they agreed to the release as an act of goodwill towards Donald Trump. They got nothing in return. Donald Trump, whose team brokered the release,
it's a big day,
celebrated his freedom.
And he's coming home to his parents, which is really great news. I mean, to me, it's big news.
On board a flight to Israel alongside Idan Alexander's mother, Trump's envoy, Adam Boehler, told the passengers that America would bring all the hostages home.
President Trump, he's looking to go get back every hostage, every Israeli who wasn't dead.
Idan Alexander's family, who had gathered in Israel for his release, called for the remaining hostages to be freed.
Thank from my bottom of my heart that they bring Idan home, bring Idan back to us, and now there is 58 hostage that we need to bring them back all together immediately.
There is hope in Israel that this deal would lead to the release of the remaining 58 hostages, but also anger that President Trump has done what Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't.
I promise you, Netanyahu, if you don't end the war now and my child is murdered because of you while he's in captivity, I will haunt you until your last day, and I will not be alone.
And as Benjamin Netanyahu entered court in Tel Aviv for another day of his trial, he was confronted. Nimrod Cohen is the same age as Idan Alexander and was taken by Hamas from the same military base on October the 7th. He remains in Gaza, and his father says Netanyahu is to blame for his son's fate.
It was never a priority for Netanyahu to release hostages. His only priority is to keep his position as prime minister, to keep himself free from prison.
But Netanyahu welcomed Eden Alexander's release and said Israeli action had pressured Hamas to do the deal. 17 people were killed, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health, in a strike on a school in northern Gaza earlier today. Women and children were again amongst the dead. The Americans are pushing a plan to restart humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza. But there is hope that the release of Eden Alexander could persuade Trump to push Israel and Hamas to accept a new ceasefire deal too. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Well, the developing situation in Gaza is just one thread among the many meetings and bilaterals the US president will take part in over the next few days. Let's just take a look at what's in store for Donald Trump during his first major foreign trip of his second term. Let's talk you through this. Trump is due to arrive here in the Saudi capital of Riyadh in the early hours of the morning. He's then expected to meet the country's de facto leader, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. On Wednesday, Trump is scheduled to attend a summit with the leaders of the Gulf Cooperation Council, where it's understood he'll present his vision for the Middle East. The US president will then leave Riyadh and travel to Qatar. It's expected Trump will hold meetings and accept a luxury Boeing jumbo jet as a gift from the ruling family of Qatar to use as the new Air Force One. The final day of the tour will be spent in the UAE, where Trump is thought to be holding more talks on topics including oil, trade and security. Well, before departing for his Middle East tour, President Trump expressed optimism about ongoing nuclear talks with Iran, saying very good things are happening. Have a listen.
Today I'm heading over. We'll see what we're going to do with respect to Iran. I think you have very good things happening there, too, by the way. I think they can't have a nuclear weapon, but I think that they are talking intelligently. We're in the midst of talking to them, and they're right now acting very intelligent. We want Iran to be wealthy and wonderful and happy and great, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. So I think they understand that I mean business, and I think they're being very reasonable thus far.
President Trump there before departing for the Middle East. Well, our US correspondent Mark Stone is also following the president's tour and is here with me. Nice to see you, Mark. Usually we see you coming out of DC, but you're following the president all the way here. There is a buzz in the air ahead of this arrival tomorrow. I mean, we travelled from London together, and we were sort of wondering what would be top of the agenda. We knew it would be economics for the Saudis, the Emiratis and the Qataris, and it was security, security, security. But along that 7-hour journey, so many other things suddenly appeared in terms of breaking news.
Yeah, it was a mad journey. I mean, I got on the plane talking to colleagues in London, and they were saying, what do you think the thrust of the trip's going to be? I was like, I'm not really sure, but it could go in any direction. And then in the space of, 6 hours on the flight, it went in multiple directions. I mean, Donald Trump really, it does feel like he's riding a lot of horses right now, galloping on a lot of horses. And I think that he may well fall off one or two of them and then leave them to one side in the way that he does. Well, it doesn't matter, let's just focus on this. What's it going to be? I don't know. I mean, the prospect, perhaps you laid out his agenda there, of him on Thursday not going to the UAE and instead going to Istanbul. Wouldn't that be remarkable? But it will only happen, I think, if Putin decides to turn up. And I wonder whether he will, or whether he will decide to send a subordinate instead to undermine Zelensky. And let's see where that goes. Gaza, absolutely critical. And I think behind the scenes, although on the face of it, the Saudis will want to talk about business, and there's this number of $1 trillion of Saudi investment into America. Remember, for Donald Trump's base, that's important. When they wonder why he's going to this far-off country, Saudi Arabia, that's what he tells them, because they're going to invest in our country, in rebuilding America. But the Saudis, far more than they did just a few years ago, because this country's moving so fast, they now have a real stake. They are a regional player, so they could easily say, and I imagine behind the scenes they will be saying, look, Mr. President, we're happy to invest in your country, but there's a few things we want right now, and one of them is Gaza. You often hear people saying, oh, the Saudis, they don't really care about the Palestinians. I've been told repeatedly over the past few days, don't believe that. Mohammed bin Salman, he does care about the Palestinians. The people of Saudi Arabia, they certainly care about the Palestinians. So there's a bargaining chip, there's leverage there that MBS has got. So I think that issue will definitely be on the table. Maybe not overtly, but you know, there are plenty of people who are described as Trump whisperers. I think MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, he's one of them.
Yeah, and if we think about 8 years ago, because it was almost 8 years to the day that Donald Trump came here on his first official diplomatic tour in his first administration, how far this nation has come, how much the world has changed in that time. And you described Saudi Arabia as a regional power, but frankly, the Gulf countries have now become global players, whether it's mediating conflicts. We saw the Russians and the Ukrainians come here multiple times trying to resolve that issue. The issues with Hamas, the Qataris tried to resolve that there. So they are becoming pivotal to Donald Trump's not just reshaping the Middle East, but in many ways the Middle East is reshaping Donald Trump's global agenda.
In his first presidency, when he came here, as you say, however many years ago it was now, I think it was the case then that the Saudis needed Trump more than he needed them. That's not necessarily the case now. I think the relationship is a little bit more balanced. And you're right, the region has changed profoundly, convulsions over the past couple of years, changes obviously with what's happened in Gaza, but you know, look at Lebanon. Hezbollah has been decapitated there. Iran is much weaker. In Syria, the Assad dynasty has gone. Maybe the new Syrian president will turn up here as part of that Gulf meeting on, Wednesday. So many different things are going on, but two constants. Donald Trump is back. He was here all those years ago. He's back. Mohammed bin Salman, of course, he is still the Crown Prince. But those two characters have changed as well. Both are much more powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at even the Iran deal, which Donald Trump just talked about there, 8 years ago, the Saudis were sort of celebrating the fact that Donald Trump was stepping away from it. Today, they're saying, actually, bring the Iranians in from the cold. We want this deal. We don't want this region spiraling into another conflict. And another thing that's been constant in all of this is the lack of a state for the Palestinian people. And while big business may not have that as the top of the agenda, the Arab street still cares about it.
They do, and that was precisely to my point. And I clearly think that the royal court here, they recognise that. They need to keep their people on side. And so they know that the street here does care about the Palestinian issue. So it is absolutely a point of leverage for the Gulf Arab countries, not just here in Qatar, the UAE as well. There is, of course, one man who is not here who would never be invited, and that is Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister. He would love normalization with Saudi Arabia. It's the jewel in the crown in this diplomatic normalization between the two countries. Donald Trump really wants that as well. He wants it in 3.5 years now, before the end of his term. If he wants that, the Saudis might be able to say to him, look, we can talk about that for sure, but you need to sort out the Palestinian problem first. A Palestinian state is what we want, and it is in Donald Trump's gift, maybe, to pressure the Israelis to do that. But, you know, to borrow an Israeli phrase, look at the facts on the ground. In the West Bank, in Gaza, it sure as hell doesn't look like we're anywhere near a Palestinian state.
Yeah, absolutely not, unfortunately. Mark, thank you so much. As always, we'll be spending the next few days together, traveling on the road, covering all of the twists and turns of Donald Trump's trip. For now, thank you. We'll be speaking to you again later in the program, and I will be joining Mark on his podcast as well. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now, and you can listen to the latest episode of Trump 100 Extended, which asks, why does Saudi Arabia love Donald Trump? You can listen and follow for free wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, as I said, I'll be appearing on that Trump 100 podcast and talking about my thoughts on this historic trip as well. Well, I'm joined now by Yasmin Al-Khuwaita, an analyst and host of the Majlis podcast. Thank you so much for joining joining us here on the program. I was just saying that to my colleague, there really does feel like there's a buzz in the air. I wasn't here 8 years ago when Donald Trump made his first trip, but it seems the nation is getting ready for this big trip. I heard something like, several hundred journalists have been accredited. So people are descending on the country to see what actually happens. And we know that already there have been talks of big investments, big deals that are going to be put in place.
Well, thank you so much, first, Yalda, for having me. I agree, the energy, in Riyadh, really, it is electric all the time. I think that's hard to believe for people who haven't been here, but truly you can feel change happening day by day. So this could be another ordinary day, but it's not. This visit is hugely important to the kingdom. It really signifies the role that Riyadh is now playing on the global stage, not just as a regional economic force, but really as a global player in global stability. And this shows that the U.S. recognizes this. This is Trump's first official foreign visit. He's seeing that Saudi Arabia is going to be a key player in all of the decisions to come in the years to come, and he wants to make sure that that relationship is established right off the get-go.
And I guess in many ways, for Saudi Arabia, they want to ensure that this is seen as a bilateral visit as well, while he'll be going to other states in the region, and there are other issues that are emerging. They do want to ensure that this is a one-on-one, the big deals that they'll be talking about. We know business leaders are coming from the United States, and there are business leaders, tech companies here lining up to have conversations with the Americans about what they can both get out of this trip.
Yes, there are a number of topics on the table, whether you're talking energy, you're talking economic cooperation, defense. All of these are on the table, and all of these are incredibly important to Saudi to be on the forefront of. I think it's no coincidence that the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman just announced Humane, an AI company that's supposed to be investing and operating all across the value chain, a day before Trump shows up. So really, we're trying to make sure that we're at the forefront of all of the critical sectors that Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world is investing in. And we can expect to see some big deals being signed in these critical sectors tomorrow, as well as looking into bilateral relations on other fronts. So Saudi Arabia is not just a trade ally. We have always been a strategic partner to the U.S., so we can expect to play more of a role in the mediation space as well.
Let's talk about the situation in Saudi Arabia, because when we talk about the transformation, people often read about it, but it truly has come such a massive way, even in the last 8 years in this country. You host a podcast. 70% of this country, 2/3 of it, are under the age of 30. What are the expectations of young people in this country in terms of what they can get out of this trip as well?
I think when you look back at the first Trump visit in 2017 to where we are now, the leaps and bounds that we've already made have made the population incredibly happy and made the world happy, truly. If you look at the beginning when the vision had just started, we were busy laying the framework and changing legislation in order to enable all of the change that's happened. And for the past couple of years, we've really had our foot on the gas pedal and just accelerating across all of these sectors and finally seeing the fruits of our labor. So we're past a lot of metrics that we had set for 2030, whether that be in unemployment and women's participation in the workforce and tourism. All of these things we're seeing people working at and happy to be involved in. And I think this sort of socioeconomic change on this scale hasn't been seen before in history. And to see a whole nation working towards it wholeheartedly and enthusiastically is really exciting.
And we were just talking there about Saudi Arabia moving beyond just being a regional power, that it is truly now a global player, whether it's brokering deals between the Russians and the Ukrainians, which happened here in Riyadh, or encouraging President Trump to sign a nuclear deal with the Iranians, or indeed saying we're not going to agree to normalization with Israel until we see some kind of statehood for the Palestinians. Are these things that young people in this country are expecting as well? The Gaza issue to be discussed, the issues around Ukraine, for example, and Iran. Do they expect that from MBS, for example?
We expect to see Saudi to continue to be a global mediator and to truly be a force for good, as our Islamic duty as the holy custodian of the two sites. It's really about being a force for good in the world and making sure that we are doing our best to enable peace and broker peace across the globe, and just even more recently sending an extremely high-ranking government official like Adil Jubair to India and Pakistan to personally broker peace there himself, where other countries, simply made a phone call. It really shows that we are committed to the goals of creating a global unity.
Yasmin, we're grateful that you've joined us here on the program. Thank you very much for
having me.
talking to me. Well, you're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim, live from Riyadh. Stay with us. We've still got lots more coming up. Fresh hopes for peace talks and desperately needed aid. What the release of an Israeli-American hostage could mean for Gaza. Plus, the details behind the US brokered ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Sky's Cordelia Lynch sits down with the Pakistani information minister.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back to the program. I'm joining you here live from Riyadh. And before we go on to discussing the rest of the program, I just want to show you these latest pictures that have been released of the Israeli-American hostage, Idan Alexander. Let's just show you these images that came into us a short while ago. You can see there Idan being reunited with his family members. He is back in Israel now, and he has been reunited with his mother and other family members who traveled from the United States to Israel to see him. He has been in captivity, in Hamas captivity since October the 7th, and as part of a deal that the United States and Hamas agreed to just in the last 24 hours, it was announced by Steve Witkoff that Idan Alexander, the last remaining American-Israeli hostage, would be released from Hamas captivity and handed over to the Red Cross and would be returned back to Israel. And we saw there those images of him returning and being reunited with his family members after being in Hamas captivity since October the 7th, 2023. He was the last remaining American-Israeli captive. Now, the release of Idan Alexander by Hamas has opened up the prospect of a wider agreement to get aid flowing back into Gaza. But the humanitarian situation there is now critical since the breakdown of the last ceasefire and the blockade stopping much-needed aid from getting in. Well, I'm joined now by Philippe Lazzarini, Commissioner General of the United Nations Agency, UNRWA. Thank you so much, Mr. Lazzarini, for joining us here on the program. We spoke some time ago, and many months ago, you described the situation in Gaza to me as unimaginable. I just want you to give me a sense, and our audience, a sense of the picture now from Gaza, because there was some hope earlier this year when we saw that ceasefire brokered, where there was promise that aid would be allowed back into the Strip. That has now stopped again. Just give us a sense of what it looks like.
Yes, good evening, Yalda. It is true that all the gain which have been registered during the ceasefire, 2 months of ceasefire, during which the humanitarian community has been able to significantly scale up assistance into Gaza Strip, has been completely reversed now with 2 months of brutal, total siege imposed on the entire population. And today we are in a situation where there is no functioning bakery anymore, there is no functioning kitchen, there is absolutely no food anymore to be distributed to the population. And we heard also today the latest figures regarding the malnutrition. We have already 500,000 people living in a catastrophic situation, and the entire population of Gaza facing possible famine if this siege is not lifted.
You had tens of, thousands, frankly, 12,000 people who were operating and working out of Gaza. Of course, when we last spoke, there was an internal investigation taking place into accusations that a number of your staff were either involved in the October 7 attacks on Israel or supported the attacks. You were launching an investigation at the time. If you could give us a bit of an update on that investigation, and also whether you are able in any way to engage in food distribution or any sort of aid distribution. I know you say that the bakeries are empty, but any kind of work that your staff that are still there might be doing.
Yes, Yalda, it's true that there is absolutely no food to be distributed anymore in the Gaza Strip, neither by my organization or any other humanitarian partners. But we have 12,000 staff, and among them we have nurses and doctors who still provide on a daily basis about 15,000 primary health consultation. We have also staff trying to manage and to organize the sanitation labor in the various shelters across the Strip. Now, when it comes to the investigations, as you know, this was terminated in July last year. The investigation was not conclusive, but despite the fact that the investigation was not conclusive, we have separated 9 staff and we have suspended all the other staff who had allegation against them. Since it is true, it has gone unabated. We receive regularly allegation of possible infiltration, and as you know, the organization takes this allegation very seriously, and we keep asking for information in order to help us to do investigation. But up to today, we haven't received any.
So, Mr. Lazzarini, are you in direct talks or indirect talks with the Israelis at all? I know in the past you've talked about, even historically before October 7, you were in constant communication with the Israelis, providing them with lists of your staff. They would flag any issues with you. Are you now in any form of communication with them?
Well, we continue to provide the staff list to the Israeli authorities on a regular basis. It is true that today there is a piece of legislation which prohibits any direct contact between Israeli officials and UNRWA officials, but it does not mean that there is no daily contact between the broader United Nations family and the humanitarian community and the Israeli.
Mr. Lazzarini, Israel and the United States, there have been reports of potentially, getting the private sector to step in, private organizations to step in and provide aid to the people of Gaza. What is the position of the United Nations when it comes to that?
During the ceasefire, the humanitarian community has proven and demonstrated that it could scale up significantly, and basically we succeeded to reverse the trend of spreading hunger into the Gaza Strip. We had, at the time of the ceasefire, up to 400 distribution centers in the Gaza Strip. What we have seen today with the proposed model by Israel falls short to respect any humanitarian principle, because basically what they're proposing is a selective assistance to part of the population of Gaza, while the entire population is confronted with a famine situation. So it's a model for which it's impossible for any humanitarian organization to be associated with.
Mr. Lazzarini, I have about 30 seconds left, but I just wanted to ask you, President Donald Trump is coming here tomorrow. He will be landing here. There's a lot of talk about US and Hamas talks. We saw Idan Alexander, the Israeli-American, being freed in a gesture of goodwill. I just wonder, what is at stake here with Gaza and the situation? What is your expectation or hope that President Trump will be able to do whilst he is in the region?
I really hope that President Trump will use his influence to impose a ceasefire, to impose a return of humanitarian assistance, and also to make sure that the remaining hostages be released. And it's only at that time that we will be able to build on a ceasefire.
Mr. Lazzarini, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you.
This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the program, President Zelensky calls on Vladimir Putin to drop excuses and sit down face-to-face for peace talks. We've got the latest from Kiev.
show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
Welcome back to the program. Volodymyr Zelensky says the Kremlin should drop excuses and confirm that President Putin will meet him face-to-face for peace talks in Turkey this week. Ukraine's allies have been piling the pressure on Russia, with the Foreign Secretary David Lammy warning Putin to get serious and show willing. Meanwhile, President Trump has floated the idea he could take a detour during his trip to the Middle East to participate in the talks. Well, earlier I spoke to our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn in Kiev and started by asking him if President Zelensky had succeeded in calling Vladimir Putin's bluff.
I think it was a clever move on the part of Volodymyr Zelensky, but in some ways he really had no choice. He's living in this kind of unfair reality that Donald Trump has made for him, where he is blamed for everything from starting the war very unfairly to not ending the war. And for Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin can do no wrong. He's certainly very rarely criticised by the American president. So, as you say, there was sort of this game of diplomatic ping-pong. It started off with European allies throwing the ball very much towards Vladimir Putin. And with the coalition of the willing, with Donald Trump on board, we were told, they thought, boxed Putin into a corner where, with this demand for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire, and warned there would be sanctions and much more military aid to Ukraine if Putin didn't comply. In the early hours, Vladimir Putin sort of made his move by saying he didn't want a ceasefire, but he would accept direct talks. And then Donald Trump kind of helped him dig himself out of the hole that the Europeans had dug for him by supporting that idea. Donald Trump saying, well, the ceasefire didn't seem as important as the idea of talks. So Zelensky really had to go along with what the American president said, which was to agree to talks. But then he upped the stakes by saying he would go himself to Istanbul. And I think the question now is Donald Trump going to make Vladimir Putin go as well? Intriguingly, the American president today has said he believes both leaders will be there. But we've had complete silence from the Kremlin and no sign at all, publicly at least, that he's forcing Putin to go. So I think the assumption is the Russian leader will not go unless he's made to. And at the moment, I don't think the Ukrainians are holding their breath that that's going to happen.
Yeah, Dom, you're in Ukraine at the moment. Is there a sense that for the Ukrainians, at least, things have improved? For Zelensky, the relationship with the United States has improved after that disastrous meeting in the Oval Office. We saw the minerals deal signed, and now it seems that Volodymyr Zelensky is just agreeing to anything that Donald Trump wants right now.
Yeah, if you talk to Western diplomats, they do see a kind of shift in the way Donald Trump is approaching Ukraine. I mean, yes, he did seem to give support and help to Vladimir Putin, crucially, over the weekend. He's kind of let him off the hook. But on the other hand, they seem to think that Donald Trump now is more sympathetic to the Ukrainians, and particularly because of that minerals deal, as you say. That gave Donald Trump something to show for the diplomacy that he believes he began. It's a shiny, exciting deal. He likes deals. And it does seem to have made him buy more into Ukraine's future. So although, you know, at every stage with Donald Trump, you see him chop and change and change his mind, he certainly does seem to be more sympathetic to the Ukrainians. And crucially, he's not doing what he had threatened to do, which was to walk away. And he's not making that threat anymore, because although he would be walking away from both sides in pulling out of efforts to end this war, it would hurt Ukraine more because he had threatened to take all military aid for the Ukrainians with him. So that's encouraging the Ukrainians. But also, I think, is this sense of a stiffening sense of resolve from the allies as well. We had France, Britain, Germany and Poland, all their leaders here with Ukraine's president over the weekend, and then the coalition of the willing with them. Now, whatever happens in terms of this unconditional ceasefire that they've called for and has not been complied with fully by Russia, whether they punish Russia or not with the sanctions they threatened to do so with, I think there is a sense of a stiffening resolve, and that is going to continue. I think also, crucially, Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, is also seeming much more robust in his support of Ukraine than Olaf Scholz did before. All of that, I think, is going to worry Vladimir Putin and make him feel that he's going to have less and less room to manoeuvre and to wriggle. But for now, at least, it looks as though Donald Trump has kind of let him off the hook. It's going to be fascinating what happens this week. Is he going to put pressure on Putin to meet Zelensky on Thursday in Istanbul? And if he does, we could see Donald Trump there as well. I think then we would see a real shift in diplomacy, moving things towards real, meaningful negotiations. But I think at the moment, the Ukrainians don't believe that's going to happen. At the moment, they seem to think that Putin is going to, in a rather cowardly way, in their minds at least, stay in the Kremlin and send other officials instead.
That's our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn reporting there from Kiev. Now, many had feared it could spiral towards a full-blown conflict, but a US-brokered ceasefire between India and Pakistan seems to have kept peace in the region, well, for now. Hostilities had escalated between the two countries after a deadly attack on tourists in the disputed region of Kashmir last month. Sky's Asia correspondent Cordelia Lynch sat down with Pakistan's Information Minister Ataullah Tarar to delve further into the details of that truce.
What sparked that truce and who began the conversation?
I think different countries were speaking to both India and Pakistan, and obviously they were conveying their concern over the whole situation, and they were gravely concerned for the safety and security of the entire region. So I think a lot of countries played their part, and obviously as the Prime Minister has already expressed gratitude to President Donald Trump, who played a pivotal role in the ceasefire. And besides that, he has also thanked the Chinese leadership. They played their own role over the whole situation, and the Saudi leadership, the UAE leadership, the Turkish leadership, the Qatari leadership.
What, if anything, was agreed upon as part of this ceasefire? Was Kashmir on the table? Have you made a commitment for you and India to discuss that?
I think President Donald Trump's second tweet has made things abundantly clear, because he wants a resolution to major issues between us, between India and Pakistan. And he has specifically mentioned Kashmir, that he would like to settle.
So is Kashmir now on the agenda as part of this ceasefire deal?
The US president made it abundantly clear that he would like to resolve issues including Kashmir. So let's see how things unfold in the near future. I think the Pahalgam incident, on which Pakistan expressed its concern, on which Pakistan expressed sympathy with the victims and their families, we offered that there should be an investigation, a fair and transparent investigation into the matter. But India did not go towards the investigation, and without any proof, leveled baseless allegations against Pakistan. Till date, they have not been able to produce a single piece of evidence linking Pakistan to the Pahalgam incident. So without any proof, without substantiating your arguments, you attack Pakistan on mere allegations, on mere speculations.
If the attackers haven't yet been found, how can you be so confident that they are not militants linked to Pakistan and Pakistani groups?
No group has claimed responsibility, first of all. And secondly, in an area in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir, where there are 700,000 soldiers to subjugate the Kashmiri population, isn't it a security failure? Isn't it an intelligence failure of India that they could not even catch the terrorists?
That was Ataullah Tarar, Pakistan's information minister, speaking to our Cordelia Lynch. And if you scan the QR code on your screen now, you can watch Cordelia's full interview with Pakistan's information minister, Ataullah Tarar. Well, this is The World with me, Yalda Hakim, live from Riyadh. Still to come on the programme. The US president says he'll accept Qatar's offer of a luxury jumbo jet as a temporary replacement for Air Force One. Reaction from Trump biographer Michael Wolff.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here They don't just arrest 'Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's futures.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Welcome back to the programme. Well, as ever with Donald Trump, controversy is never too far away. And this trip to the Middle East, well, is no exception. Although Qatar says a final decision has yet to be made, the US president has already announced he'd be happy to accept their offer of a luxury jumbo jet as a temporary replacement for Air Force One. But that's caused concern amongst Trump's critics, who argue the gift raises both ethical and security worries. Well, let's bring in Michael Wolff, Donald Trump biographer and author of All or Nothing, How Trump Recaptured America, who joins us live now from New York. Michael, it's always good to see you. I mean, it's funny, I said there in that intro that the controversy is never far away from Donald Trump, but it's also this idea of this palace in the sky, this jumbo jet being gifted to Donald Trump by the Qataris, also doesn't come as a total surprise.
Well, I would say that it's one of his top concerns, an airplane, what airplane he is on, what the airplane looks like, how comfortable it is. Throughout the campaign, and I tell this story in my book, it was one of the persistent themes. Was the plane working, or was it broken down? And when it was broken down, the campaign would be thrown into a disarray because Trump would be in such a rage. I mean, it really paralyzed everything. I mean, there was a instance when there was a crack in the windshield that put the plane out for a month, and he stormed around. The chute was then mistakenly deployed. They fired the person who mistakenly deployed it, but that put the plane out. And one of the reasons, it's interesting because he could just charter another plane, but one of the point here is it was his plane with his name on it. So it was like some guy with a very fancy car and suddenly forced to go and get a rental. So this is a subject extremely close to his heart.
And I guess the ethical issues around this, the concerns around this, not just whether this plane, no doubt, will be an incredibly luxurious and secure plane, but Air Force One has, special sort of features within it, and therefore, it almost has to survive doomsday. The fact that the Qataris would be gifting him Air Force One, there are so many questions around this that are concerning so many people.
Huge questions.
Yeah.
But I think it's that for Trump, it's literally, let's balance this ethical questions against a really impressive plane. He would take the really impressive plane. And the point about Air Force One is that they've been trying to replace that for some time, and that has encountered all kinds of delays. I mean, I think Boeing is doing the plane, and they haven't delivered it. So he's very frustrated with this. So he's gone, off books, so to speak.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, will he, like Reagan, put it in the library or keep it forever for himself? I mean, we're not quite there yet, but there's also, the Qataris haven't necessarily confirmed that this is actually even happening.
I mean, that's an interesting thing that Trump rushed out to say that this was happening, and the Qataris are like, is this deal closed? Have we made the deal? Have we gotten what we wanted?
Why do you think that, that's just typical President Trump, though, isn't it? I mean, even at the weekend with that deal, the ceasefire brokered between India and Pakistan, he sort of preempted everything by putting it out on Truth Social before the two sides were probably even ready for an announcement to be made.
Well, I think that he believes, headlines are a negotiating tactic, or not. Headlines are the reality. You say it, it must be.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's always good to speak to you, Michael. Thanks so much for joining us here on the program.
Anytime.
Well, let's bring back in our US correspondent, Mark Stone, who joins me here. And Mark, as I said, we'll be covering President Trump over the next few days together. Where this week takes us, whether it takes us to Istanbul or elsewhere, we'll have to wait and see.
But wind of change, certainly windy up here.
Very, very. But, again, the big question around these things, the sorts of gifts that Donald Trump is likely to get. We saw the sword dancing on his trip 8 years ago. And now perhaps this jumbo jet, which will be coming his way.
Yeah, but he's such an impressive messenger, isn't he? I mean, his response to that, which his base will just love, is, well, why would I pay for something when I can get it for free? I mean, that was his answer to it. Incidentally, he did also say that he wouldn't use it after he's left office. It would go to the presidential library. It's going to be a really, really interesting time, and I'm so struck at how quickly this country is changing. You and I, everything happens at night here because it's too hot during the day. We were having a drink last night with some locals here, and the one point that just came through to me was just how what so many people around the world in developed countries have experienced is change over generations. Our parents, and back. Change has been slow. In just one generation, this guy was telling me how in his dad's generation, it had changed totally from living off the land in the desert to what we can see around us. And if you look at just the last 8 years, it's changed so fast. It's been supercharged in the last 8 years. And I think that change, where women can now drive, where global events, world sporting events are now going to be hosted here in Saudi Arabia, it is into that profound change, AI and all all the rest of it, that Donald Trump arrives tomorrow to a much, much more confident country, Saudi Arabia, a more confident leader, Mohammed bin Salman, and of course Donald Trump. Well, we know he is much more confident than he was 4 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said earlier, you know, maybe 8 years ago, this region needed Donald Trump, but now it might be that Donald Trump also very much needs this region. Yeah. Mark, thank you so much. We'll be talking to you a lot over the next coming days, and we will be following all of the twists and turns here from Riyadh and beyond. But for night, from me and the World team, good night.